I'll give the caveat first that I'm an introvert, and the idea of a big crowded conference, in theory, sounds terrible to me. But when I'm actually at an ICIPA, number one, the panels are fantastic. You get to hear all sorts of different experiences of things that you might be going through or could go through in the future in sobriety. And I've learned a ton by listening to those. But also the main meetings have fantastic speakers. And even though I'm the introvert, I actually really enjoy the hype before the meeting. It's a really cool way to see people loving AA in an out loud sort of way rather than just in a subtle, I'll do my own service. When I've gone to these, I always leave feeling a bit tired after the weekend, but also really on fire for AA and young people getting sober.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. This is Little Ginge here. Or wait a sec. Recently I've been called, what did Emilio write in? I think he said Don Juanito. I like that one. Rusty just shortened it to Lil G. And I don't know, does one have to stick with one moniker? Or can you have several? I think that's the word. Is that right? Moniker? Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I'm thinking I didn't get that right. But I don't know. Can you have several nicknames? I don't know. It's just something to be discussed out there in the ethosphere. Is that a word? Ethosphere? Anyway, that was the voice of Cara that you heard at the beginning of this here episode number 345, and you are going to hear so much more from her in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is brought to you by, this episode is made possible by Timothy, Laura, Mary Lynn, and Brad. What, you may ask, did Timothy, Laura, Mary Lynn, and Brad do? Well, they found our humble little website, www. Don't forget the dot, soberspeak.com. They scrolled to the bottom of the page and they clicked on the little yellow donate tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Timothy, Laura, Mary Lynn, and Brad. This here episode is coming right out to you'uns. And for those of you joining us out there, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, I am ecstatic you have joined us. I know you have so many other things you could be doing with your time, and I appreciate you joining me and our guest on our silly little podcast here. And just keep in mind always, I am John M. and just another bozo on the bus, and I appreciate you guys all tuning in. All right, so I thought last few weeks, I think like I've, in my mind at least, I've come on here with the problem of the week, the I don't know what it is, but this time we're just going to go right into the episode about YPAA. This is called. I may come up with another title before we actually publish, but for right now we're calling it YPAA. That's YPAA, and you're going to be hearing from Cara, Matt, and Casey in this kind of a we're going a little bit outside the lines here. We're drawing a little bit outside the lines here. We are going to be talking about to Cara, Matt, and Casey about their recovery journey and what recovery has meant to them. But we're also going to be talking about many other things, including what is YPAA meetings, YPAA meetings, and what's Icky Paw meetings, and what is that? And if you don't understand what all those initials are all about, well, Matt and Cara and Casey are going to clear it all up for you just here in a second. We're going to talk about what service means to Matt, Cara, and Casey. We're going to talk about the steps, traditions, service, and how all are needed for a well-rounded sobriety experience. We talk about the general services and the thing that we're going to mainly work toward here or talk about is the big shindig coming up in Austin, Texas, July 4th through 7th of this year, just in case you're listening to us in other years. This is 2024. But coming up on July 4th, 2024, and how you don't want to miss out on that event. It is going to be the event to outdo all other events, the conference to outdo all other conferences. And it is going to be a grand time, I am sure. Whether you are a young person or not, you're more than welcome to come with the conference. We'd all love to see you there. And for those of you, you're going to hear about links during this episode. There's a link to the Icky Paw site. There's a link to the registration. There's a link to the hotel booking site. And all those links are going to be in the show notes. You want links? We will give you links. And also, if you're driving and you can't write any of that stuff down, but you can remember to go to our website, soberspeak.com/events, or just click on the events tab. You will see all of the information there. And I think you're going to enjoy coming to the conference. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, even if you don't come to the conference. And even if you don't go to the conference, you can get involved in all these organizations. But I will let Matt, Cara, and Casey talk about all that. And we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this here episode. Enjoy, Matt, Cara, and Casey. Okay, everybody. So today we are sitting here with a group of folks for a kind of a special type of edition of the Sober Speak podcast. And we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. But first things first, I'm going to ask our participants to go ahead, introduce themselves, give their sobriety date if they wish, and then we'll get a little bit more into the content. So I'll just pick out people here. Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Matt. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is August 24th, 2006.
Cara?
Hi, my name's Cara. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is November 2nd, 2012, and I'm living in Austin, Texas.
And are you in Austin as well, Matt?
I'm in Hutto. Sorry, I missed that part. I need another cup of coffee.
That's okay. Where are you again?
I'm in Hutto, so it's a suburb of Austin. It's about 30 minutes from downtown Austin.
Gotcha. And last but not least, a gent who has been on the podcast many times in the past, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, sir?
KCW, alcoholic, January 13th of 1990. I hail from Frisco, Texas. Fun side note about Matt, Hutto, it's the Hutto Hippos. They have one of the best mascots in all of Texas.
Is that Huddo, Matt? Is that how you spell it?
No, Hutto.
H-U-T. Oh,
Hutto.
the Hutto Hippos.
But it kind of rolls off the tongue as Hutto.
Yeah.
Especially when Matt's from Louisiana. So it really rolls off the tongue that way when you're from Louisiana.
That's true.
And so, and I must comment, Matt, that rarely do I have somebody join the podcast that has more podcast equipment than I do in their room. Do you tell me? You must have some sort of podcasting background here. What's going on with you?
I actually don't have a podcasting background. It just looks like I'm a podcaster. I actually have a recording studio. So this is a recording studio in here. If you saw what was in front of me, I have several screens, a TV. I have a screen right here. I have turntables right here, and I have a rack of gear right here. And actually behind me is a vocal booth. So when I'm recording people, this is the talkback mic to talk back to them. I've always thought about starting a podcast, but I've never done it. But this gear has actually never been used to podcast. Maybe one time it has for somebody else's podcast, but yeah, it's not for that personally.
Well, I am envious. I may have to listen. I can talk to you about how to start a podcast, and you could talk to me about how you set up your equipment, and we can trade knowledge. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay. So, what are you guys? Okay, Casey, no offense. I love you to death. You've been on the podcast many times in the past, right? Well, Matt and Cara, will you just go ahead and give us kind of like a thumbnail sketch of your background, a little like a real short version of what I was like, or, what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. Can you kind of go through that for me? Which one wants to go first? I'm fine either way.
I'm going to let Matt go first.
Okay, I'll go. Okay. Yeah. So Matt, alcoholic. I got sober in Louisiana. I'm originally from Southwest Louisiana, and I got sober kind of in South Central Louisiana. And I started drinking whenever I was about 11 or 12 years old. Caught this thing called alcoholism very, very early on. Crossed that line of no return very, very early on. As far back as I can remember, whenever I took a drink, I had no control over the amount that I took in, and had some legal trouble and all kinds of other trouble, throughout my drinking. And, at the age of 19, not completely of my own choice, but partially of my own choice, was really just tired of doing what I was doing. And with the help of the Lafayette Parish correctional, system, basically was given the ultimatum to go back to jail or go to a halfway house, and that was August 24th, 2006. And I haven't had a drink since. And I got sober at 19, got real involved in AA, got a sponsor, got a home group. Most of the principles that were instilled with me with my first sponsor are the ones that I carry today. And it's been a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of things have changed. Obviously, service work changes. You take on different roles and different things to do in service work and things like that. But, get sober, have a sponsor other people, have a home group. That's the baseline of my sobriety. And I get to do all kinds of other really cool stuff with Casey and Cara and all kinds of other people just serving. But, that's the baseline of my sobriety. And service has been a large part of that. And that's basically it in a nutshell. And I moved to Texas in 2017. And so my life has been on full blast since I moved here in 2017.
What prompted that move to Hutto?
I actually moved to Austin originally, and me and my then fiance, actually, she was my girlfriend when we bought the house, bought a house in the suburbs. And I moved to Austin a little bit before she did, but my sister had lived here for a very long time, and I'd always wanted to move here. And things just moved out of my life where I didn't have a lot of obligations in Lafayette, where I got sober, and I moved here. And it was just something that was in my mind. When I told people whenever I was moving, I was like, yeah, I kind of figured, because you always talk about it, right? Talk about like just speaking things out into the universe. And it was just my time to move here, and it was very apparent. All the things that happened whenever I moved here and up until this point, it seems like God just trailing me along for the next thing to do. So it's been a really cool experience moving in sobriety.
Very nice. All right, Cara, let's step over to you here for a little bit. Give us once again thumbnail sketch of your experience and what got you here.
Yeah, listening to Matt, he and I would not have gotten along at all when we were drinking, even though we are very much cut from the same cloth now, because I was the goody two shoes kind of kid prior to getting sober. I mean, as goody two shoes as you can get when you're drinking underage. But I was the straight A student, the prestigious school that I was going to for college that I had moved to thinking I'm going to make something of myself. And then my drinking really took over. And I started getting into some scrapes where I wasn't getting in trouble with the law. I wasn't having DWIs. I wasn't getting into any of those sort of situations with the external check marks, but I was doing more and more things that I really wasn't okay with. And, being a woman, I ended up in some pretty dangerous situations as well. And with a lot of the pain from being baffled and, really internally befuddled at what was going on with me, as somebody with a really strong will and stubbornness, not being able to control my drinking was super frustrating. And when I finally had this moment of desperation, I ended up going to some AA meetings, and I found a group of people that were not the first group of people I met in AA, but I met a group of people in Boston where I was living when I got sober that had some sort of glow about them, and they were doing service and they had sponsors and they were picking up the cigarette butts and they were doing all the things that didn't get a pat on the back, but they seemed to be happy doing it. And so I hung out with those folks and I started doing the things that they were doing very begrudgingly. I was the one that threw temper tantrums every step of the way. And I wish I could tell you that I grew out of the temper tantrums at age almost now 33, but everything that I need to do for service now is still a little internal temper tantrum, though I throw them externally far less than I used to. And I, like Matt, I had the opportunity to start moving around a bit while I was sober. I had been in Boston for the first 5 years or so of my sobriety, and I had had this gnawing feeling that I needed to go get my MBA. And so I ended up moving to Northern California in order to do that, and was sober out there for a couple of years, met some really wonderful people, and then took a job offer in Austin in 2020, which moving during COVID was a really silly thing to do. That would be a whole other podcast episode if you want to talk about that later. But I moved here, did my first year here completely online because all the groups were shut down, and then ended up getting in person in AA in 2021 in Austin again, and haven't looked back since.
Wow. Did you say you're in your 30s? Is that what you said?
I know. Isn't that crazy? I thought I would be dead by 26.
Well, what I'm saying is, you look like you are. I would have guessed you were like a teenager, 25 or something like that at the most. And so, for sure, I wasn't.
You're kind.
Well,
that is the joy of being sober is
there
that I
you
don't
go.
look like I'm aging as fast as I used to be, and some really good hair dye to cover the grays.
Oh, now somebody who does not look like they're 30. And I want to talk to you real quick, Casey. All I want to mention on your end is the studio that you're in right now for this recording, which you've really gone to great lengths to make it happen. Can you talk to us about where you are right now?
Yeah, I'm in Austin, and so I decided while we record, my kids are with me, and so they are playing in a park right now. So I am recording from my car in a park. There are actually people running around. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I hope you see some things in the background, but I have purchased a $10 headset to make sure this works with my phone, and so I have actually invested in the podcast today. I want you to know that.
Thank you, Casey. I appreciate it. And by the way, Casey W., the reason I'm not good, he has been on several episodes in the past. If you just look up Casey W. and Sober Speak, you can see all his episodes. We've had quite a good time together. All right.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and switch gears here a little bit. So what we're going to end up doing here eventually is talking about this event that is down in Austin, coming up in July. And will somebody please explain to me the difference between YPAA, icky paws, all the ickies, all the paws, and what that means, and what all the initials mean, what all the acronyms mean, and just somebody walk me through that, please. Looks like Cara. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So young people in AA are just a type of meeting in the same way that you would get a men's meeting or a women's meeting or an LGBTQ meeting or a 12 and 12 meeting. Many intergroups list young people's meetings on their meeting lists as just a sect of folks in AA. That the meetings are not exclusive to those people, but are tending to be tailored to those folks or run by folks that are young. And so here in Austin, for example, we have a handful of meetings that are open meetings and anyone's welcome to attend, but they do tend to be primarily young people at those YPAA meetings. And what's really neat though is that when you're young and you're sober and you've got a lot of energy, there's some enthusiasm that just can't be contained in a meeting, right? You need to have some way to celebrate being sober more than just once every 5 years when the AA International Convention is. And so these conferences of young people in AA started popping up all over the place. So YPAA, which is the International Conference of Young People in AA, is the oldest. That's what started back in the 1950s in Niagara Falls. And so we're 64 years strong now of YPAA.
Okay,
And
so is
that
it all part of the same organization, though? YPAA and YPAA, and do they all kind of like,
is a great
blend
question.
in together?
It's a great question. So YPAA is more of a general term to describe young people in Alcoholics Anonymous, no specific organization. But when we talk about conferences, those are typically incorporated separately, similar to how the AA General Service Board is incorporated as a nonprofit. And the reason being is that each of those conferences needs to be able to purchase its own insurance. They need to be able to set up bank accounts. And so they're all separately incorporated. And so, for example, the International Conference of Young People in AA is incorporated out of Colorado. The Texas State Convention of Young People in AA is obviously not incorporated in Colorado. It's incorporated here in Texas. But similarly to how, to give another example of this that is not a young people's one, my old home group in Boston had the Freedom Trail Conference every year, which is a big book weekend that takes place at MIT, the great conference. Uh, but they're incorporated because they need to be able to provide insurance, have bank accounts, things like that. And so while it's all put on by AA members, they are, in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of the IRS and in their bank accounts, separately incorporated. So when we talk about young people in AA, it's really just young members of AA doing many different things. And then when we talk about specific conferences, that's where, in the eyes of the institutions that we are operating within, we sometimes need to set up separate accounts.
Okay. And so you had mentioned it earlier about being quote young, right? And I guess the word young is a little bit of a moving target. I mean, does that mean 16? Does that mean 25? Does that mean 30? Whatever the case may be. But not everybody that goes to these conferences and not everybody that attends these meetings is quote young, right? So talk to me about how that works. I mean, like there's nobody carding you at the door when you come in, right?
Right. No, definitely not. We are just a regular AA meeting, like any other AA meeting, or just a regular AA conference, like any other. We ask for people to register for the conference. That's how we know who's coming, but there's no sort of ID or cutoff age of what you need to be. And I will say from my own experience, what young means really differs depending on where you are and the AA community that's around you. So when I was living in Boston, young meant early 20s. When I moved to the Bay Area, young meant 15, 16. Southern California, young people in AA, we're talking 12, 13 years old sometimes, right? Texas tends to be a little in the mid 20s, right? It just depends on the demographics of the area that you're living in and who tends to be getting sober at what ages there.
Okay. All right. So let's talk then a little bit about what service means. And I actually want all three of you to speak on this because this is important, right? I mean, one, as you know, there's the triangle, right? Service, unity, and recovery. And I know that all three of you take that service part very seriously. And not everybody does. It's like the old 80-20 rule, 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. But talk to me about what service has meant to you and your recovery, not only for the YPAA conferences and all the YPAA events, but the just in general, what it has meant to you, where you have lived. So, Matt, we'll start with you on that.
Yeah, whenever I got sober at 19. I guess whenever I was about 20 or 21, I was voluntold to be the coffee chair for the state convention in Area 27, which is in Louisiana. And that was my first job. I think I was also GSR around this time as well. It was my first job that was a service position outside of the group level, right? So up to that point, I was a coffee maker. I was picked up butts, cigarette butts at the meeting.
I didn't know where you were going with that. So yeah, I'm glad you clarified.
Cigarette butt. And so, all these different things, and started chairing meetings and all this stuff. Well, whenever I was voluntold to be the coffee chair of the state convention, that was the first job in service outside of the group level. And whenever I think of service, I think of things that are outside of the group level. I know some people consider 12-step work service work. I don't. I consider that a part of my recovery. It's what it says in the big book. It says, basically I'm carrying this message as a part of my own recovery. So I have to stay sober. And if we're looking at the first legacies of recovery, basically that means that I'm taking care of my recovery. And so whenever I think of service, I think of stuff that is outside of the group level. It may be a service position within a home group too, but generally I think of stuff outside of a group level. You guess you consider home group stuff too. But I tend to think of general service or conferences. And my experience has been very interesting because, I hung out at a lot of young people's meetings and I went to a lot of young people's conventions, but I also got a lot of direction and guidance from old timers. And I was very grounded with people who were much older than me, right? And had very differing experiences getting sober. So whenever I went to young people's meetings and young people's conferences, it was good to have people that were my age going through the same thing. And kind of alluding to Cara's point, we're not going to exclude anybody, but there is something about walking shoulder to shoulder with somebody similar in age with you because it is a different experience, but we won't exclude anybody. It's just a specialized either AA meeting or conference, right? But we put these things on for anybody. And so my experience going around to different conferences for a while, I really didn't host my first young people's conference until I was about 7 or 8 years sober because sometimes you just don't have an enthusiastic bunch of people to do it, even if you're real excited to do it. And that's usually what you need. You need at least for a state conference, that was the size of the place where I got sober. You need at least like 5 to 10 people really to go and do it. And with a thing like YPAA, you need like 15 to 30 really enthusiastic people. And the committee's about 100 people altogether. And so, we're not even counting all the volunteers that will be there. Right. And so, after hosting the first young people's conference, and around that time I started getting involved with district work. And so things have evolved. My experience has always been that I've done both general service and service to conferences. And I've served on the state conference, a local conference in Louisiana. I've served at the local conference here in Austin. And I've done, various things wherever it is. And sometimes, I need a service position, right? It's just a part of the deal. I was sponsored in a 3 legacy program, and that's the way that I was sponsored. And so we do steps, traditions, and concepts, and we hit all 3 sides of the triangle. And my experience has been not being in all 3 sides of the triangle and not being in the middle of AA. I can get very sick and very not well. Some people can just skate by with going to their home group, right? Like everybody's a little different. But for me, I personally need all 3 sides of the triangle, or I'm not well, right? And that's just been my experience.
Casey, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience with service?
Yeah, I think, I'm lucky in that when I came into the program early on, it was expected to have a service commitment of some kind for us starting out that was at our home group. And because of that commitment, I was the GSR at Westlake Group in Austin in like I think it was 91 and 92. And so that's the person in your home group that represents you in general service. And so I got to really participate in general service really in my first year of sobriety. And so because of that exposure, I got to see what that was about. I got to see how much work went into that. right? What it takes to have a meeting, to create the organization that allows those meetings to get communicated, how we get big books, how we decide what stories go in the big books, how we decide what additional literature gets published, all those kinds of things, how we deal with new issues as they arise at the group level, and then therefore kind of at the general service level. I also got involved in YPAA very early. When I lived in Austin, there weren't YPAA meetings, but we did have YPAA conferences. And so we bid on those and attended those. And so my journey over time, because that was obviously a long time ago, and to your point, John, thank you. I am not actually a young person anymore. I am 52 years old. And so I have kind of a combination of both of those. I actually tend to spend a lot of time being quiet with God around where He wants me to be. And so that's taken me a lot of different places, many places that I didn't necessarily want to go, and was certainly glad that I was there when I got there. And I've gotten more involved in YPAA in probably the last decade because a friend of mine asked me to speak at a YPAA meeting there in Dallas. Someone at that meeting asked me to sponsor them. I started to go to that meeting regularly because I was sponsoring this guy. More people asked me to sponsor them there. We ended up getting awarded TexiPaw. I think that was I'm not going to say the year because I can't even remember exactly which year it was, but early on, decade ago probably.
2014.
2014. Thank you, Matt. He's the keeper of all things. And we got to host that conference, and I got to host that conference with sponsees, which was super cool. And then from there, I actually got on the advisory council with TexiPaw and did that for 5 years, which is the group that kind of helps people bid and host. And so from that, continued to go to that one young person's meeting, continued to be involved with young people, and then I was in Louisiana when I saw them bid for ICIPAW, and it was an amazing bid, incredible group of people that were so enthusiastic about sobriety, and I said I need to get involved in that, and so I got to help them bid last year, got to go to San Francisco where we were awarded the conference. And so I will say one thing about young people in AA, and I get this a lot because I do try to outreach, right? And I try to outreach to the older community because those are the people that I'm mostly hanging out with, and sometimes they laugh, it's like, hey, you're not a young person. And I'm like, actually, YPAW is really meetings and conferences put on by young people for everyone, right? And if you haven't experienced that, you need to go give it at least a little bit of a try, because to Kara's point, the enthusiasm and energy and emotion is unmatched in Alcoholics Anonymous, at least that I've seen so far. And so that's kind of been my experience. I'm a three legacy person, right? And I've always been raised to have a service commitment of some kind. And I try to let God decide where that's going to be for me. But I think it's been a real important part of my recovery. I have to do that for me, to feel plugged in, to feel like I'm being of maximum usefulness. I know that's not for everybody, but it's definitely been my experience.
We have our mutual friend, Stuart, who talked about going to his first YPAW conference with you. And he consistently talks about some guy who got up on a chair, took his shirt off, and was
yeah, some guy that did that was Stuart, John. I have a photo of it. I don't know what story he's telling you, but Stuart, who had like 9 months of sobriety in Louisiana, ripped his shirt off and whipped his shirt around his head during the sobriety countdown, which is, you're like forced to be enthusiastic. It's amazing.
Oh, well, I have to get with Stuart. I swear he's talking about that in third person like it's somebody else.
I can understand why.
But it was definitely him.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Cara, talk about your experience with service and what it's meant to you.
Oh man, I wish I had something original to say here, but I am also a Three Legacies gal. That is just how I was sponsored. That's how I was raised up in AA. And it was an expectation that I would be involved in service in my group, service outside of my group, that I would be well versed in our steps, but also in our traditions and our concepts, and that those were not nice to haves. But for the kind of sick alcoholic that I am, I was told that I needed all of AA because I was that sick. And I got all of AA, thank God, because I really needed it. But my first, I don't know if it was exactly my first, but the first one I really remember of service positions below the group level was as the District 14 secretary in Area 30 in Eastern Massachusetts. And I got that gig because I had broken up with a man in the halfway house that I had been dating up the block from me and stopped going to a certain meeting, real AA talk here. So I had stopped seeing this fellow and stopped going to the meeting we had gone to together. And a gentleman who happened to be the DCM of our district saw me at a coffee shop one day and was very surprised that I wasn't dead because I had stopped going to this meeting that I had always gone to. And I explained to him, oh, woe is me, bad breakup. I can't go to that meeting anymore, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, wonderful. I'm so glad you're sober. You would be a great secretary for District 14, and I think you should be of service. And I got roped in. I had no idea it was a 2-year commitment. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was a pretty dark district at that point in time. There were 2 GSRs that sometimes would show up. And I got bored being at a meeting with just him and 2 GSRs. And so I started helping him outreach to different groups to help them get GSRs. And all of a sudden, all my friends that happen to be young, enthusiastic, whatevers, are GSRs of their meeting so that they can come hang out with me at the district meeting. And we got a lot of groups split back up with general service as a result of me being real bored with that one gentleman at those meetings. And, he let me stick around. I ended up being the alt DCM for that district afterwards. And that's when I started moving around. And so, like Matt and what Casey were describing as well, I'd always been involved in conferences. So my home group had always had a big book weekend. When I moved to California, I found a conference that did Traditions and Concepts, the Unity and Service conference out there. And so I helped them out. Being recording secretary in a few different roles there. And when I moved to Austin, my knee-jerk reaction was to stay involved in general service because I'd been a part of the area committee in Massachusetts in addition to the district work. That was my bread and butter. And I had never been a part of a YPAA conference, nor did I have any desire to be a part of one because I had a lot of preconceived notions as to what that meant. And what I found when I got here is I was involved with the district at first. I was the treatment chair for District 3B, 3C when they were meeting together in Austin. And I filled that role, but found that the place where I was really being called to be useful, similar to what Casey was saying, and spending time in prayer and meditation as to where I can be of maximum usefulness. For me, there were a lot of young women in the Austin area that I felt like I could be more useful to in a YPAA position. And so that's when I joined the bid for ICIPA and was a part of that for 2 years. And then now here in our year of hosting this conference. And I've learned so much from the people on the committee. And that's like all of my service positions in AA. I throw a tantrum about it, like I said earlier, and I don't want to do it. And I grumble about it and all those things. And then I leave so much better on the other side of it.
Understood. Okay, well that's great. Okay, so let's turn a corner here a little bit and start talking about this event. And I want to know, first of all, what you guys do, what your role is within this particular conference, and then we'll talk about the conference itself. So, what are y'all talk about? How you're involved with this? Matt, why don't you go first?
Sure. Yeah, so my position is the chairperson, and so I am the person that if anything goes wrong, essentially I'm the one that they complain to, and if everything goes right, I give all of my grace to the committee for doing such a great job. So it is very much a thankless job. I'm not saying that out of spite. It's what I knew that I was signing up for. I was the chair of Lacey Paul, so it's very much something that I've done before, and it's very rewarding, right? Even though it's very hard at times, and it's really all about the committee and coaching people and making sure that all the deadlines get hit. It's very much, a role that take for instance with Icky Paul, if we lose money and everything just burns to the ground, I'm the person that the next year gives a final report at Icky Paul Forum. And like, if people have complaints, are going to go to, and the same thing throughout the conference. Right. And I say all that because it is a big deal. It is not a small conference. It could be anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 people, maybe even more. I don't know the exact numbers on the largest one. I think the largest one ever was in Phoenix. So it's a very big conference. There's a lot of cost. We're uniquely dealing with a situation post COVID where everything's more expensive. So we had to, adjust some things on our end for what the registration is so we could be self-supporting. And then Austin is an expensive place. So there's just a lot of variables. And we also are hosting in July, right? And so it is an abbreviated timeline. And we're trying to do some things that have never been done before with this conference. And so can't really share a whole lot on that right now, but essentially we're dealing with a lot of variables. But what's also cool is, and I know Cara can attest to this, there's people on our committee who've never been to an Icky Paul, right? And there's a larger part of us that have, but there's probably, I'd say it's maybe half and half, maybe a little bit more of people who haven't, just because we need so many people to be here, and we need boots on the ground of people just helping. They have no idea what they're signing up for. So Thursday, come to speaker meeting, they're going to get there and they're going to have such a crazy experience of realizing, oh my God, what am I a part of right now, right? And so a lot of why I love, chair or any type of leadership position in AA is you get to see those moments a lot, like sponsorship. You get to see the light bulb come on in people in a way that you don't always do. You catch a lot of heat, but you also catch a lot of things where you just wouldn't see it if you were in any other position. I was chair of the bid for 2 years during COVID, and then we had election. Felt like it would be a good time to let somebody else be the chairperson, just so they could have that experience. It's invaluable whether or not you want to be the chair of the host committee or whatever. And then what I, personally, whenever we went into elections, I was fully willing to be whatever the host committee elected me to be. So I've planned on standing for chair all the way down and taking whatever. And so my experience in Atlanta, Icky Paul, which was 2009 or 2008, was a life-changing experience. And I was about 20 years old, and I'd never seen anything like that. I'd been to conferences before, but it was such a life-changing experience. And ever since I've moved to Texas, I've been wanting to host this here. And it's never been hosted in Austin. It's one of the only metro areas that it's not been hosted in. So it's a lot of this is bringing this back for everybody here to have that experience and also get to go to it where they don't have to get on a plane or whatever, and hopefully have the same life-changing experience that I had.
Love it. And I know, so, and I want you to talk next, Cara, but like a part of what all of you all do, and I've seen you doing it, is you go to various meetings all throughout the land and you just announce this, you hand out flyers, you hand out brochures. And anyway, it's cool to watch all y'all do that. Okay. So Cara, talk to me about your role here with the conference and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the alt chair, which means that if anything happens to Matt, I'm the one that gets to be on the hook for everything. But in actual practice, I am helping support a lot with all the different pieces of the conference that Matt has a hand in. I work really closely with a lot of the folks putting together our program. So picking speakers, helping pick panelists. I also work really closely with our graphics chair to help put together all the signage and things like that goes into a conference. And, there's many different subcommittees within our broader committee. And it's nice because I get to bop around to all these different aspects of the conference. And like Matt said, one of the things that I really love about being in either a chair, an alt chair, or some sort of steering position within committees is getting to help coach folks that are either newer to service or newer to hosting conferences, really feel empowered in their roles. That's something that I find super valuable. And last year, as we were bidding, watching folks that had never been involved in service below the group level, had never been a part of a conference committee, really have the light come on in their eyes when they understood that they were doing this to be of service to the next alcoholic so that that person could have a message and really become a part of AA and feel the enthusiasm that you can have when you're young and sober in AA. And that's the thing that makes it all worth it for me. Even when there's some long days and some hard decisions that need to be made, it's definitely getting to watch other people get on fire for carrying the message of AA.
Nice. And then I'm going to have Carrie go, but I do have to tell you, I'm still thinking about what Matt said with the secret surprise. I know we're going to leave it as a teaser out there, but I got to admit, it's kind of rolling through my brain. Like, I don't know, is Bill Wilson going to be brought back from the dead? He's going to be on stage, something like that. I don't know. Just
if I could get a hologram of Bill Wilson like they did for Tupac, you better believe I would do it. Unfortunately, I don't know if that one is within our budget this year, but we will submit it as an idea for future Icky Paws.
Yeah. And our theme actually comes from a Bill W. speech from the 1960 General Service Conference, talking about communication and talking about that we're living in an era of change. It was actually a theme of one of the past General Service Conference, I believe in 2021, I believe was the 71st General Service Conference. And so it's a really cool speech if you ever look it up. There may be some interesting things if you come to the conference that you'll get to see when we actually present our theme. That would be really cool.
Ah, a little tease there. Yeah, I like that.
But that's not the secret. I'm not going to lie to you. That's not the secret that I was thinking of. But I can't tell you the secret. I've sworn to secrecy.
All right, we'll just run with it. I'm good with it. What about you, Casey? What is your role there with the conference, sir?
So I am officially the alt treasurer. So I help Sarah, who is a dreamboat, run all the finances. She does most of the work and then occasionally calls me and complains. So it's a big financial undertaking for a conference this big. I'll also say that, the chair and co-chair, I've been on a lot of conference committees before, and the chair and co-chair, alt chair can, they can kind of run the meeting and let everybody else do their job, or they can be very involved. And it tends to be when they are very involved, you have the very best conference you can have. I've never seen anyone more involved than Matt and Cara in a conference. And the group of people that have been put together to host this are really a special group of folks. And so it's going to be a special conference. I'll also say that, obviously they were very involved in the bidding. The bid is kind of the lifeblood of all conferences. It's where, you take your city and you're trying to bring the conference back to your city, and you do work all year as if you're going to host the conference. You put together all the contracts, you do all the events, you raise money, and then you bring a bunch of people to the conference. And so the work that Matt and Cara did on the bid, it just as important as what we do for the host, and the people who are now bidding this year for Icky Paw are really going to be the folks that are the kind of the future conference and the people who are going to attend. And so all of that work becomes a big deal too.
Nice. Okay. So let's transition to, if there are people out there listening, young people or otherwise, and they're saying, hey, this event sounds really cool. I'd like to get my little bony behind on down there to that conference. How are they going to find out about the conference? Hey, Cara, what are you doing? You're like moving everything around. Are you on it? You can't be moving around like that. That just throws me off. By the way, I like that painting behind you.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. I just wanted some better lighting so that I was leaning a little different direction. Sorry for throwing the.
You're making me dizzy. You're making me dizzy here. All right. So let's just say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I just got to get down to that conference there in Austin. But by the way, just going to Austin, Texas in general is like winning the lottery. But if you go to, if you're in AA, going to Austin, Texas, and you go to a conference at the same time and get to experience both, it's like a double lottery. So tell folks how they can access the thing, what's going to go on there, what's the, I mean, do they have obviously they have speaker things at night, then they have like meetings during the day, then they're going to bring in the Bill Wilson hologram and all that kind of stuff. So talk to me about what's going to go on during that week.
Yeah, so typically on Thursday is the start of the conference. Our conference is going to be July 4th through 7th in Austin, Texas, in downtown Austin at the beautiful JW Marriott. We do not deserve this hotel. It's a beautiful hotel. It just as a selling point, it is literally blocks away from 6th Street. It's blocks away from Lady Bird Lake. If you've ever been to Austin, it is in the heart of downtown, near everything that you would ever want to do if you were going to be downtown. So there's tons of other places. Whenever people think of things to do in Austin, I love Waterhole, so it's not necessarily exactly where I would want to be, but there is water there, right? And then you could also ride a bike to Barton Springs if you wanted to. That's not out of the reach.
You mean
Anyway.
Waterhole like actual water,
Oh,
right?
yeah, like
okay.
Twin Falls, any kind of
Okay.
like spring-fed water. That's why I love about Central Texas is all the water. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked here. I get excited whenever I think about swimming. So
Because I
Thursday-
thinking about Waterhole like a drinking Waterhole.
No.
Yeah. But 6th Street is near it. So anyway, I'm sorry. I do have a tendency to get sidetracked. Go right back into your thing, Matt.
So the Thursday is the kickoff, right? Right before that, and we can't divulge too much about the program right now because it hasn't been released. There's typically a pre-conference event, which is an extra charge typically, but it is you get something in return, right? So Boston did Fenway Park. Louisiana did a second line, which is a parade. I'm from Louisiana. It was one of those things culturally that was really cool to see because whenever somebody gets married, we do the second line. Whenever somebody gets buried, we do the second line. Whenever somebody's celebrating some type of special event, we do the second line. It's just a very culturally ingrained thing in Louisiana. San Francisco did Alcatraz. So we're going to do something on theme that you're only going to be able to experience in Austin. And I can't tell you what that is, but it is going to be something like that you only be able to experience in Austin. Then Thursday night is the first main meeting.
Okay, so Thursday night is July 4th, right?
That is correct.
And for those who are listening in America, obviously July 4th is a big holiday. It's, celebration and all that stuff. But I mean, hopefully people are going to come in internationally. Just so
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
coming in from overseas, just know that July 4th is a big holiday here in Texas. So you'll want to book your flights early. That's for sure.
Yeah,
And
it's a big
also something that the hotel that we have, the JW Marriott downtown, is blocks away from where the big fireworks celebration happens in Austin
Ooh.
on the 4th of July. So
Yep.
obviously we can't control that as part of our conference, and we can't claim that we're putting on this big fireworks show. But after the main meeting on Thursday night, it'll be in time for folks to go see the fireworks if they want to celebrate or if they want to experience for the first time, like you were saying about international folks coming in.
So just to reiterate, YPAA is sponsoring the fireworks show and
no.
controlling the fireworks show, right?
No, not at all.
And in fact, there'll be a big picture of Dr. Bob in the fireworks, right? Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure I'm straight.
No.
Yes, to match the Bill W hologram.
Okay, I'm sorry, Matt. Go back.
Yeah, I mean, so we're leaving the main meeting on Thursday. Our goal is to get everybody to a place where they could see the fireworks. There's several places. You could go all the way. So imagine you're leaving a speaker meeting on July 4th. If anybody's been in the international, it usually happens on July 4th as well. So this is something that happens, which we just uniquely got this date. And this does happen. And I've been in international. It's been a thing. Literally leaving the main meeting, and then you go out and you're on the terrace on the roof of the JW Marriott looking over Lady Bird Lake, and you see fireworks. So essentially just, painting a picture of what it will look like and feel like. We have probably a slight little break. We'll have entertainment. And so the rest of the conference is mostly going to be panels, workshops, daytime entertainment. We have a few things that are.
Okay, so just real quick, for people who don't understand what panels and workshops are, because you have people who are, not, they've never been to a conference before. So explain what like a panel and a workshop is all about.
A panel is typically on a specialized topic. It could be something out of the book. It could be a unique experience that's a little bit more specialized. A lot of our stuff we kind of broke down. Either it's going to be step-based, tradition-based, concept-based, or experience, strength, and hope-based. So it's like dealing with grief and sobriety, moving and sobriety, those types of topics. So those panels are going to be 3 panelists speaking on it with most likely an Ask It basket where people don't have to feel so intimidated by asking it at a microphone. And essentially, we'll put their question in an Ask It basket, and then the chairperson of that panel will read it. Workshops are a little bit more intensive, where they're sharing information and there may be a presentation. And so this is going to be something that's going to be more of like a very, very specialized topic. And it may be a little bit more prepared on the back end for each one of those speakers to speak about a certain thing and kind of deep dive in something. And so we had planned to have some concepts workshops and things like that. And there's some other things that are just like history type things that we're going to have. And a lot of those are very like oriented, not necessarily on experience, strength, and hope, but more on one of the legacies, right? But very much more of a deep dive than what a regular panel is. And they're typically more interactive too. So there may be places where you pause and you actually get a question from the crowd. And so that's going to be a little bit more deep dive. We may actually do Ask a Basket with that. And so that's the difference between the two. Daytime entertainment, I mean, it's really just things to do during the day. It's going to be really hot. It's July in Texas, right? As you know, you live here. So yeah, I mean, if you want to get out and go do some things around the city, you definitely can. We'll have some stuff around the hotel. And then my nighttime stuff is mainly the speaker meetings, the main event, right? And there's a lot of dancing. There's a big hype up. If you're a young person and you go and you've ever been to a conference that wasn't a young people's conference and you go, it's very like straight lace. You know, we say a prayer, we read some meeting format stuff, and we do it. A young people's conference is a lot different than that. That is one thing that you're going to notice is it's a lot of people getting really excited, and there's music before typically of just elevating the whole thing, and then there's a speaker meeting, and then we try to with our speakers this year really get a wide variety of people with different backgrounds and different places of where they're at in their sobriety, and we spent a lot of time hammering home what we wanted in speakers and finding those people. And so we're real excited for our speaker lineup and all of our panel topics as well.
Is there a requirement to take your shirt off and whip it around your head, or is that like optional?
I mean, if you want to do it, it's not something that I would necessarily encourage. Because
okay. Yeah, and you don't want to see Casey doing that. I guarantee you. Like, okay, so it's not a requirement. It's definitely
not
optional.
a requirement. No, clothes are encouraged.
Well,
yeah.
Austin. There's some places where clothes are not encouraged. But anyway, we digress, or I digress. All right, so and let's talk about cost. If somebody's going and they're saying, yeah, I'd love to come here, but I just, funds are tight. How much is it going to cost to do all this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. The pre-registration right now costs $45 for all 4 days of the conference. And we're doing that as an early bird discount. And so the closer you get to the conference, the more expensive it gets. Mostly because it helps us plan when we know that people are registered and we know how many people to expect. And so how many snacks do we need in the hospitality room, for example? Like those sorts of logistical things, we like to get early registrations. So right now it's $45. As we get closer to the conference, that price will increase. So we expect people would probably like the discount and register as soon as possible.
Okay, so I'm just kind of thinking here. So the $45, and this is kind of like most AA conferences, right? The registration fee is very minimal. I mean, comparatively speaking, I think the majority of the cost is going to come in like, I guess it depends on how many days you stay at the hotel. If you stay at the hotel, you don't have to stay at the hotel to join this, right? But just give people a general idea if they're coming. Do you know how much a night it is to stay at the hotel?
Yeah, we have a group rate that's $189 a night for staying at the hotel, which, mind you, this is the JW Marriott, which is normally like $600 a night.
Yeah.
So we're thrilled that we were able to get this room rate. We also have a pre-registration contest going on at the moment where folks that register by May 31st are able to get into a raffle so that they can maybe get a suite upgrade within the JW Marriott if they've registered and booked their room. So we'll be drawing that randomly to try and, encourage some folks, but $189 a night is that hotel cost.
Okay. So, I mean, that, and then your food depends on, how much you spend going out to eat and stuff like that. But But the registration fee itself for the conference is very reasonable, right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of kind of getting there and where you're going to stay. Obviously, if you're living in Austin, it makes it a lot easier. But what about parking and stuff like that? Do you have any idea what that's going to be like?
There's parking at the hotel, which I believe is around $55 a night. You could also park. There's some self parking that's nearby. I typically don't like parking in parking lots in cities, but Austin's a very safe city. So, not to get into divulge any kind of thing, but I'm just saying, like, parking in a parking lot in downtown Austin's relatively safe compared to a lot of other major cities. And so you could park there. You could also, if you have friends in Austin, you could also park your car at their house in an Uber if you wanted to. And if you're flying in, there's a shuttle that literally from the public transit that there's a bus that runs every 20 minutes about a block away from the JW. So if you're flying in, it's really easy just to take that bus. It's literally like probably $5 at the most, probably. And essentially we're going to have all that on our website. So if you wanted more information about that, we're going to be updating that pretty soon. It's the 64th ICYPAA, that's ICYPAA.org. Or you can go to ICYPAA.org, which is ICYPAA. That will also have like a link to our personal website. Our website's got more information about our specific conference. The ICYPAA.org's got a bunch of other things. And so we plan on having a bunch of more, like we have the registration link and the book your hotel, but also like things to do, parking information, how to get to the hotel, because it's July 4th. And if you're traveling and you're like flying in, or driving in, we're going to try to get as much information about that downtown celebration, because there are going to be like road closures. Where it is right by the hotel is literally like a mile or so away from where all that's happening. So it's going to be busy. So we're going to try to make sure that if you do register, you get all that also in an email if you don't go to the website, just so you have like some expectation of a lot of these things that we're talking about, just to give you kind of an idea. And so we plan to get all that out as we get closer to the conference and get a little bit more information.
All right. And just so folks know also, I'm going to put the links that Matt was just referring to in the show notes so you can, have that in. And then if you can't remember any of that and you want to email me at JohN @soberspeak.com, I will forward the information on to Cara, Matt, Casey, and they will field your questions accordingly. All right. Okay. So let's just kind of put a bow on this. People they're going to know how to get in touch with you guys if they want to, but just kind of is somebody give experience, strength, and hope around the conference itself, and what you've gotten out of these particular conferences in the past, and all three of you maybe give 2 minutes on that if you could. Okay, so we'll start with Cara. You want to start?
Sure. I'll give the caveat first that I'm an introvert, and the idea of a big crowded conference in theory sounds terrible to me. But when I'm actually at an ICYPAA, number one, the panels are fantastic. You get to hear all sorts of different experiences of things that you might be going through or could go through in the future in sobriety. And I've learned a ton by listening to those. But also the main meetings have fantastic speakers. And even though I'm the introvert, I actually really enjoy the hype before the meeting. It's a really cool way to see people loving AA in an out loud sort of way, rather than just in a subtle, I'll do my own service. And so when I've gone to these, I always leave feeling a bit tired after the weekend, but also really on fire for AA and young people getting sober.
Love it. Casey?
Yeah, this has been awesome. John, thanks for the time today. For me, I can't understate how important conferences were in my early sobriety and what they mean to me now. I got thrown into a car my first month of sobriety to go to the Coastal Bend Jamboree in Corpus, and to sit in a room with a bunch of people celebrating sobriety is such a different experience than you get with your home group. The fact that this is in Austin, a real central location for Texas, a great opportunity for our state to kind of celebrate together. I know people are going to be coming from everywhere, but for goodness sakes, if you are anywhere close to Austin, just come for the day. Especially if it's something if you've done it before, you know you want to come back. But if you haven't done it before, I really encourage you to come. And like you said, reach out to John. I'd love to talk to anybody. If people have questions or want to know more about the conference, want to know more about young people in AA, it's been an important thing for all of my recovery as a young person, and now a guy who's older and still loves the enthusiasm and energy. And so really appreciate the time and getting to be with you guys today.
Mr. Matt, wrap us up.
Yeah, and I'll try to not share anything that hasn't been shared before, because that's all been great, and I don't want to be redundant. So I'll say, like I said, I started going to conferences very early on. A lot of those relationships that I formed at like the first Young People's Conference that I've ever had have been relationships that I've had well over a decade. And so over 17 years or so of being sober, essentially, I've got to watch these people grow and walk shoulder to shoulder with these people. And I've got to watch them walk through a lot of the same life changes, and grow up. And a unique experience with young people is we were very young whenever this started, and now we're, in our mid 30s. And so watching life progress. And then I see some of the older people that are ahead of me. And I get to watch them have like even longer relationships. So these lifelong bonds are things that I can't understate how important they are. How much I cherish these relationships that I've formed with people over the years, from people all over the world. And so these are things that, like, I can't really explain it to you here on the podcast. It's something that you're just going to have to experience on yourself. And going to an international conference is the best way to do it. And so we'd love to have you July 4th weekend in Austin, Texas, and come out and see us. And we'd be ecstatic if you came out, and we need all the support that we can get.
And I'll just add on that you guys have me fired up now. I think I'm definitely going to make a trip down there myself. And for those listeners who are coming out, reach out to me. I'd love to meet you eyeball to eyeball as well. JOHN at soberspeak.com. My name is John M. It would be fantastic. In fact, when I've done this similar kind of thing for the Cresta Butte conference in the past, and I'm able to meet a lot of the listeners eyeball to eyeball, which I absolutely love. So, all right, well, that's a wrap. I am going to read from the bigger book, the Alcoholics Anonymous, page 164. I don't know why I went into a little bit of what is that, like an Italian thing or right there. And I just have to say this. Casey said that he was listening before we started recording. Me and Casey are real good friends. Before we started recording today, that he was listening to Deb H Part 2, and I thought he was going to tell me how he really got a lot out of Deb H. But what he instead told me was he's listening toward the end of the podcast. And what did I say again, Casey?
I think somebody, for one thing, Deb H was great. So don't get it twisted, John. She was amazing. I was literally crying in my car with my kids on the way down to Austin today. But I think someone said, thanks for all the fine folks that you have on your podcast. And you're like, well, they're not all fine folks. I can think of a few people in particular. Casey's the first one that comes to mind. So thanks for broadcasting that out to the world.
Of course. All right. So here we go. Back with the big bug. This is the page 164 from the Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. And you will surely meet some of us, like me and Matt and Cara, and hopefully not Casey, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, everybody, thanks for joining the pod today. Thank you once again, Matt, Cara, and Casey. It was a pleasure spending time with all of you. And as a reminder, I talked about this on the beginning of the episode, but if you need links, I don't know why that word just sounds weird to me right now. Links. If you need links to all to the hotel registration, to the site, and the whole 9 yards, I'm going to put that in the show notes. But we have also, oh, by the way, when I say we, I had nothing to do with it. The lovely Mrs. M on our website went to the soberspeak.com website and put the event location links and some of the stuff on there, graphic and all that sort of stuff on our website. You just got to go to soberspeak.com, click on events, and we will all look forward to seeing you down in Austin. Yeah, you know what? And if you're going to be there, will you please let me know ahead of time? Me, Casey, Cara, Matt, I would love to meet you in person if you're going to actually be there. So anyway, now on to a little bit of, quite a lot actually, a lot of listener feedback. Mike writes in, and just as a friendly reminder, our friend Mike is gracious enough to monitor the P.O. box that we have in Tempe, Arizona. For some reason, there are reasons that some people either can't or do not want to email in, and they're more than welcome to write a physical letter. Physical, is that how you say it? Or a letter, right? Pen and paper, whatever. And Mike is monitoring that P.O. box, and the P.O. box is SoberSpeak, 1962 East Apache Boulevard, P.O. Box 7925 in Tempe, Arizona, 85281. And our friend Mike I'm just so grateful that he monitors this P.O. box. But anyway, Mike writes in and he says, the snail mail 1 year anniversary. Hard to believe it's been a year. Man, oh man, time flies. And Mike says, hi, John. As the title says, it's been 1 year. First of all, I want to give a shout out to our newest listeners, Patrick S. in LaGrange, Kentucky, Tanner M. in Rosharon, Texas. Rosharon. I don't know how you pronounce it. But anyway, that Patrick S. in LaGrange, it has me singing that ZZ Top song about LaGrange. How. I got a lot of nice girls down there, you know. Anyway, if you don't know that song, it's going to make no sense to you. But if you do know it, it may make a little bit of sense to you. But it may shock your system to where you don't ever want to hear it again. But nonetheless, Mike continues on. He says, thanks for writing. He's saying to Patrick S. and Tanner M., thanks for writing. And as you know, I have already contacted you and look forward to our journey together. Now, this last year has truly gone by fast. I am really amazed at it all. Life has taught me a lot over this past year. You and me as well, Mike. And he says, not everything has been smooth sailing. I've dealt with issues of moving, car troubles, and changing jobs, but it's all part of life on life's terms. I feel truly blessed to have this opportunity to help others and find their road to sobriety. John, I can't thank you enough for allowing me. Oh, gosh. I don't do anything, Mike. You're the one who does all the work, but thank you for saying that. For allowing me this opportunity and having faith that it would work when I first mentioned it to you. Yes, God brought us together, and I'm so glad you brought it up, Mike. And he says, I wasn't sure what to expect, but over the past year, we have had 17 listeners write in, and that's a little more than one a month for the year, which I think is pretty good. I think it's fantastic, Mike. He says, not sure what the future holds, but I am excited to find out. So in closing, my deepest heartfelt thanks to all that have written in. Here's all 17, folks. I know it's a few of them, but I think this is worth it, and I think it's the right thing to do. David S., Tempe, Arizona. Andrew G., Dallas, Texas. April G., Niantic, Connecticut. Stephen M., Lottie, Florida. Rocco, oh, I love that name. Rocco K., Tampa, Florida. Chris S., Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Rusty R., Dallas, Texas. George S., Indiantown, Florida. Brian F., Tucson, Arizona, right there in your neck of the woods. Richard S., Humble, Texas. Mary Margaret T., Dallas, Texas. James M., Lexington, Kentucky. Christian W., Gulf Corrections, Florida. Daniel T., Darrington, Texas. Joshua R., Malvern, it says A-T. I got a feeling it's supposed to be A-L, Alabama, but I'm not sure. Patrick S. LaGrange, LaGrange, Kentucky. Tanner M., Rosharon, Texas. And then Mike says to everybody on that list, and I will too, keep your heads up and know your journey is what you make it by doing the next right thing. Very good guidance, Mike. And to all 17 of you on that list, thank you so much. Know that we're out here and know we're praying for you, and we really appreciate you writing into Mike. Thank you so much. And once again, Mike, thank you. Sherry writes in and she says, howdy from the Midwest, John. She says, hi, John. I'm coming up on 9 years of sobriety and recently moved to the Midwest from Colorado. My new job has me traveling more than I expected as well. Your podcast is always on during my travels. It's truly a meeting away from home. I'm so grateful for this podcast. I love your humor. Not everybody thinks that, but thank you, Sherry. I love your humor and all the speakers you have on. I've struggled a bit getting to know new members and meeting. I feel like a newcomer again. Big smiley face. The meetings are different, but the same. I realize what I'm home. I realize that I'm home in any AA meetings now. Between the POD, what's the POD? And staying connected to my old friends and getting to know new friends and getting a new local sponsor, things are starting to get better. Good thing is, I never want a drink. I was just, and then she puts big praying hands. She says, I was just letting the lonely in. Oh, I get that. The point is, I think we can definitely separate ourselves if we let it happen. There are so many tools to stay sober, and I'm grateful for my higher power to give me the willingness to stay connected and know today I don't have to take a drink. We truly do this together. Thank you, my friend. I'm forever grateful for your service. Keep on keeping on. And then all kinds of emojis. I think those are clapping hands, hearts, praying hands. And then she says, P.S. Gary K is legit one of my favorites, Sherry W. And as you know, Sherry, I copied Gary on that email to you. And then Gary's response was this. He says, hello, John. Hello, Sherry. What a deal we have in this thing of ours. No dues or fees. John, you've gone worldwide. I'm blessed to be working with this thing of ours with folks in Germany and Scotland. The Sober Speak was our entry to each other. Oh, that's great. Spent time with a fellow up in Minnesota a couple weeks ago with 2 years now, and we'll be with one another in Phoenix coming on us in 4 years. And then he says, Sherry, as you are settling into a new spot, keep an eye out for the next one, and you can reach out to John. I hope to see you at the Eagles conference or the state conference or both. And Mr. Gary, And then he said, Gary K. And Mr. Gary, I am sure I will see you at both of those events. And hopefully some of the other listeners, if y'all are going to be at the Texas State Convention or you're going to be at the gathering of the Eagles here in Dallas, please let us know, okay? Patty writes in, and the subject of the email, my apologies, is episode number 342. And Patty says, Dear John, it's been a while since I've written a note of appreciation to you and the Sober Speak community. I am happy to report that I have now completed 18 months of continuous sobriety in Al-Anon, completed the steps, and met with my sponsor every week. I've had an incredible recovery of journey working with her shoulder to shoulder through the big book. The timing wasn't coincidental. The last year has been such a challenge. In March of last year, my 86 and 88-year-old parents and a sister were in a car accident. Oh my goodness. They were hit by a drunk driver at 2 a.m. coming home from the hospital. They all survived, but my mother had significant injuries. She had no resentments toward the driver, and neither did I. As my mother would say, but for the grace of God, there go I. Instead, we prayed for him. My 3 sisters and I worked together for at least a year to take care of her, and the time with her was a gift. I was working the steps, and I was able to make amends and iron out all the wrinkles from the past. It was a blessing that I had cleared up all my resentments. I am still a work in progress. God knew, because on March 30th of this year, she succumbed to complications from her injuries, and she was carried by the angels to heaven, and we held her services on April 20th. In your intro to this episode, she's talking about episode number 342. You talked about feelings of grief and depression and letting it out, and you mentioned your mother who had passed years ago. Then you mentioned the song. It wasn't a coincidence. I knew God and my mother were speaking to me through you. It was the same song we played at my mother's funeral, and I had included the lyrics in the funeral program. I had played See You Again every day over and over again during the last month as I grieved. This is the special version we played at her service, and she sent me a version. This is called Charlie Puth and Wiz Khalifa. See You Again. It's a once-over children's choir cover on YouTube. And anyway, she goes on to say, reflecting today, I believe that God and the recovery angels like you and my sponsor, the friends I have made, the speakers who have shared on the podcast, and the hundreds of meetings I have attended have given me the strength to write my mother's obituary and deliver her eulogy. To me, this community is like a big safety net encompassing the world and protecting and healing one another from the pain, tears, and injustices and wreckage. The big net holds the joy, happiness, and freedom together like a big invisible hug. There are no signs on the freeway for AA, no ads on the TV, no payments to make. It's free love, just like God intended. I know you felt like your words, I know I felt like your words were just for me, but I realize there are so many listeners feeling the same way I was feeling. So I am going to pray for everyone, to ask God to please bless everyone and give them the same gifts I have so freely received. Gratefully and lovingly, Patty S. And then she says, P.S. Can you please let listeners know I'm available for Al-Anon sponsorship and to contact you for my information? You have my email and here's my phone number. So for those of you who didn't listen to episode number 342, I talked on the beginning of it about hearing that song. The song is See You Again by Charlie Puth and Wiz. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing the guy's name wrong. And Wiz Khalifa, See You Again. And I just, I heard that and I lost it. It's about losing loved ones. So if you want the link to this YouTube video or you want to get in touch with Patty, just email me and I'll get you in touch with her. Hey, you'll get two things, right? You get the link to the video and you will also get to talk to Patty. And 3, if you need an Al-Anon sponsor, she is willing to do that. So anyway, Patty, thanks. That really, really meant a lot to me. And I'm so glad that you connected with that. Greg W. writes in and he says, connecting with June G from episodes number 183 and 184. Greg says, hi, John. I want to express my appreciation of your podcast. Well, the pleasure's all mine, Greg. He said, it's been a wonderful companion and a valuable resource in my journey. I was happy to see the titles of on 183 and 184 featuring June G. Her speaker tape was the first AA message that truly resonated with me, and she has unknowingly guided me in my journey. Her message continues to influence how I sponsor and share to this day. I would be grateful if you could facilitate a connection with June, perhaps by sharing her contact information with her permission. I'd love to send her a personal letter and thank her for the profound impact she's had on my sobriety and my life. I look forward to your response. Best regards, Greg W. Well, Greg, as you know, I reached out to June and I asked her if it was okay to share her information with you. I got out of the middle. I'll let you all communicate from there, but that's fantastic. And I loved having June G. And, I forget about these speakers sometimes. That's back on 183 and 184, but I'm so glad you found her, and I'm glad I was able to connect both of you. Last but not least, Debbie writes in, and the subject line is Deb H. She said, good morning, John. Part 2 of Deb H's talk was exactly what you said. Amazing. And then big emoji with like star eyes that are red. I don't know what it is, but it looks really happy. She says, it's a spiritual love story of AA, of Lee, and of God, and a God of experience that has shown her that God is everything, and yet the less she understands him. Deb, thank you for letting me know that I have a relationship with God as misunderstood as it is. Debbie. And then there's a big heart and praying hands. So I'm glad you got so much out of that. So glad. I love to hear it when other people talk about the guests that we have on and what they've done for their lives and how much they have impacted them. Just in case you don't know how to get in touch with me, I'm at John, JOHN at soberspeak.com. I love to hear messages like that from Greg and Debbie about the other speakers, and it just means the world to me. All right, everybody. That there is another episode in the books. No, in the can. So keep coming back. It works if you work it. May God bless you and keep you until then. And we hope to all see you at the YPAA event in Austin that's coming up here at the beginning of July 4th through 7th. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm at John, JOHN at soberspeak.com. Love y'all. Bye-bye.